Welcome to our Soul and the City podcast. This is a community podcast which endeavors to make artistic strolls with fun, one city at a time, but more importantly, absorb, dissect, and reflect socially aware dialogues together with local wordsmiths, event organizers, artists, and art enthusiasts. My name is Sor, author and social innovator, and I will be co-hosting each episode with a team of international hosts and guests in the attempt to ignite and incite universal and individual insights.
So welcome everybody to a fun and witty and socially engaged journey around the world. This is our fourth spring edition podcast, and it's called Reykjavik and All That Fuss About Iceland. It's been a difficult title, to be honest. I've heard so many things about Iceland, but it was always something like far away, like some sort of mirage to go to always aspire to, but not really know what it is about. So that's what we're trying to discover right now with our podcast. We have amazing guests, like every time, mainly migrants, but also locals from Reykjavik, along with my great co-host, Daniel. Daniel is a literature teacher at an international school in Prague, where he lives with his family, and he's the co-host of WEPodcast of Soul and the City, in which we try to debunk city stereotypes, raise awareness on social issues, dissect and highlight important aspects related to the artistic and international community in each city.
And Sor is a polyglot, a social innovator, and an ambassador for multilingual dialogue, founder of Soul and the City, an international undertaking of artistic, educational, and entertaining projects.
And we have with us four incredible guests. We will give them the opportunity to present themselves. We have with us Asgeir, Beatur, Harpa, and John. And I would like them to introduce themselves one by one, starting with Harpa.
Hi, my name is Harpa. I have a master's in comparative literature from the University of Iceland. I work in publishing. I'm also a writer, a translator, but mostly a sheep farmer, really.
Hi, my name is Johan Magnus. I'm a poet, slam poet, playwright, translator, and all sorts of other stuff. Polyglot, I guess, like you say. I like that word.
Hi, I am Beatur. I have a master's in shortcuts. I am an entertainer and a musician, I guess. I work with making golden moments for people on stage, whether they are dancers or actors or whatevers. So yeah, I've made that into a job and I like it very much.
Yes, I'm a writer, journalist, translator sometimes, based in Prague, from Akureyri. So yeah, that's about it for now.
That's already amazing. Like each time, we always find somehow we are in an amazing luck to have multidisciplinary artists every time. So welcome everybody. And I will give the mic to Daniel to introduce a little bit the topic.
We're exploring soul in the overlap of people in the space they call home, whether urban, rustic, exotic, remote. Iceland is a fulcrum point for the world's imagination, and Atlantis we know is real, with a culture that embraces mystery. Björk sings about emotional landscapes. They puzzle me. Then the riddle gets solved. And though she doesn't pose this riddle, we might imagine, what did the volcano say to the earthquake? I don't know. What did the volcano say to the earthquake? It's not my fault. Well, back to Björk, who sings in her song Yoga, a state of emergency, how beautiful to be, the rifts that underpin an island pulsing out the planet's tectonic plates, the grace of nature in its entirety. The island also pulses democracy. The Althing, or Assembly Fields, is the world's oldest parliament since the year 930. The Magna Carta, by comparison, comes nearly 300 years later. And we wonder if those English democratic challengers to King John got their inspiration by this smaller island to the west, a barely populated Iceland. The BBC in 2013 adds to this intrigue. People here tend to give birth to a book. Ad ganga med bok I magnum, if I can attempt the Icelandic adage. Statistically, 1 in 10 Icelanders will publish a book in their lifetime. It may be about some Cold War summit between Gorbachev and Reagan, or how the men's national football team made it to the quarterfinals of the Euro 2016. Regardless, an Icelander's book will be about creativity, coping sometimes with rough conditions, caring about environment and free expression. The best film my wife and I saw in recent years was Woman at War, starring Hala Gerhardsdóttir and directed by Benedict Erlingsson. The story travels us through Hala's indigenous, raw, and brilliant sabotage of an industrial plant on the island. Her passion is global in terms of consciousness and very personal in the loving manner by which she conducts a community choir and prepares her home for an adopted daughter. She pedals her bicycle through a Reykjavik that testifies to its aesthetic sense of purpose. But what about its soul?
Right. Thank you, Daniel, for the amazing introduction. That was really beautiful. We were talking together in the beginning, like I said, and we came across some general contradictions regarding Iceland. It being somehow exotic but not tropical, appealing but very mysterious and hermetic, very closed, and also the cultural weight. Do we use it as a platform for our pleasure or a playground for fun? Is it more than landscapes? What is exactly Reykjavik and what is exactly Iceland? And that's what we're trying to find out today with our guests. And I just remind our listeners that our focus is normally on 3 pillars. We are focusing on the witty, the artistic life, and the countless opportunities that one can explore in that city. The fun, the best things that we would miss about the city or about the island. And the socially engaged dialogues, normally with topics on discriminations, liberties, diversity, inclusion, restraints, biases, sexuality from the perspective of our guests. And I will start with some demographics so that we can have an idea about Iceland and about Reykjavik. And I have the latest report from the United Nations data. So I'm going to just read a couple of figures. The current population of Iceland is around 350,000. Reykjavik and its surrounding areas make up for the largest urban area in the country. Population density is more concentrated here with an average of 1,000 inhabitants per square mile. The city, which has an area of 200 square kilometers, has a population of approximately 125,000 inhabitants. So that's basically 1/3 of the entire population of Iceland lives in Reykjavik. It is believed that the city was the site of the first permanent settlement on the island, founded sometime around 870. And it's one of the safest, greenest, and cleanest global cities. So that is really, really amazing to hear. The capital region accounts for 64% of Iceland's total population. And the ethnic groups are Icelandic, around 80%, Polish, around 5%, Danish, 1%, and the rest, around 7%. And I would like to start with Harpa. You live outside Reykjavik, and you hold share in a small publishing house, as I understood from you. Can you tell us a little bit about the divide between Reykjavik and the rest of the Iceland in terms of opportunities, mentalities, cultural and artistic endeavors, and why is there a bias between the two?
Yeah, it's a good question. When I was growing up, it was basically just Reykjavik and then the rest of us. So as a matter of going to school, going off to university, that this was the only option, or at least for us I'm situated on the south coast. I'm driving to Reykjavik is a couple of hours, so I'm close, but I don't live there. So maybe it's different. Like Asgeir was saying, he's from Akureyri, it might be different over there. But for example, every time I publish a book, because I worked a little bit with this image, because I thought this is something that makes me unique, so I'm gonna work with that, but also because this is who I am. I worked with the image of this rural woman, really, and I write about it and I talk about it in interviews. And every time I take an interview, people ask me, so why don't you live in Reykjavik? We made a joke about this because they always ask, so you live here, you live close to a volcano, you live far away from everything else, how is that? But nobody in Reykjavik ever gets asked in an interview, why do you live in Reykjavik? You know, aren't you scared of the cars or something? So I think that's funny. And because this has a root, because Reykjavik is a relatively young city. It starts being built after World War II. That's when people start really moving there and the city grows bigger. And this was one of my research topics when I wrote my PS in literature. The fact that how we write about Reykjavik, because in the beginning, when the city is starting to grow, everybody writes about how bad it is. The countryside was good; it was clean, people were happy, but Reykjavik was kind of gray and automatic, and it was always negative in all how you displayed it in arts, poetry. We have like one guy, Thomas Guðmundsson, was the Reykjavik poet because he wrote about Reykjavik like it was okay, and he was the only one doing that in the 60s and 50s and 60s. So, but now when I'm writing stories about the countryside, people say, "Oh, you're unique because you're not writing about Reykjavik," and this is a 60-year gap, and this is how it happens. So I find that really interesting. And also, I think it's even maybe more in the countryside. I once sat somewhere in a newspaper. I was being asked why I didn't want to live in Reykjavik, and I said something like, I used to live there, and it was wonderful, and I get that people want to live there. I just don't want to do that. And then I met a guy in a small town, and he said, I read your interview and it was wonderful because you didn't say anything bad about Reykjavik. And he was like, why? Why would I do that? But that's sometimes the idea. People, we call it the city of fear. You go into the city of fear, and in a global, globally that's insane because it's really not a city. It's so small. But yeah, I think we're still working on that old bias when it was just the countryside was good and Reykjavik was bad. And now I think it's turned around because most of the population lives there, as you said. But then again, that is changing again, I think, because of COVID a little bit, because the countryside is growing because now we can work from wherever. We don't have to. Just when people my age were starting to go to university, nobody really came back because that wasn't the deal. You got educated there, and then you got a job there, and family there. But now, mostly everybody comes back to the countryside. It's just a few people that don't. So I don't know if that answers the question a little.
You're saying now there's a shift to move back to the countryside, as opposed to beforehand. Okay, and what were the reasons? Corona, you said, or?
No, but I think that helped because now everybody can work from wherever. You can work in Reykjavik and maybe go there one day a week or something, or twice a month for a week or something. And that changes where you can live, where you can situate yourself. But of course, it's also maybe cultural. We're always talking more and more about, being surrounded by green and how the city environment maybe doesn't help your brain. I think for us who work in creative arts, it can mean something, because we use our brains to create stuff, and what's happening on the outside and what's affecting our brain, it matters.
Okay, so the digital world helps a little bit in coming back to nature. I sense that some sort of a contradiction in what I just said, but it's somehow how it works. People working from home, so they don't need to go to the city anymore and to live there. So from your perspective, this is just a small follow-up question. Do you feel that nowadays, the capital still holds the monopole of the rest of the country, culturally speaking, and in terms of also opportunities in general?
Yes, culturally speaking, especially because I worked a lot with culture on the countryside, and even I can't even compare myself to the rest of the country because I am so close to Reykjavik. Just for example, going to a theater, the biggest two theaters are in Reykjavik, and it's not a problem for me. It's a couple of hours drive. It's not that far, but sometimes we feel second class. I think because all the biggest stuff and most of the professionals are in Reykjavik. But that also gives you, I think, a bigger opportunity to create because we are so few. Like in my close environment, there's us writers, and there's 3 of us. we are the women who are writing books, and we can meet up because we are the writers in the community. Yeah, that makes, it's smaller, but it's also because you need to be creative, you need to make it work with all the other stuff that's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can think of the idea of the ways that we write coming to stages, and all the world is a stage. And I love that you're having that in a more rural setting. Asgeir, I know your material, when you have read in Prague, it's very vibrant to an open mic audience. You really engage with them. And I was particularly interested, you have done sagas in Icelandic language and satires in English. And I'm wondering if you approach your poetic topics with a particular language in mind.
No. I actually sort of hate how poetry and writing is associated so much with specific language, because to me it's just the language I know. It's like I know English and Icelandic well enough, and that's why I write in them. And like all the nationalistic connotations and the I can't stand them, and I also can't like the historical baggage. It's not on my mind, It's like I speak Icelandic and English, but I live in Central Europe, and my poetry is largely about countries where I don't speak the language, So essentially, but even if I would only speak one language, I would still not have that language in mind as such. I'm just exhausted by Icelandic language, like literacy, and always talking about the language as being like the saviors of that small language. I really don't care about that. It's like it's one in a million languages. I just happen to speak it. It's not important to me in that sense.
Yeah, and I mentioned the audience in particular because you and I have been at these events where we'd be hearing Icelandic, Polish, and Russian, and Czech, and Spanish, and some of the members of the audience wouldn't have much acquaintance with those. But I find that so much adds to the evening anyway. I regard your poetry as relevant to our times that we live in now, but also really timeless. And I wonder if you imagine yourself or your voice, if you would ever write in a different era, and how would that be the same? How would that be different, if you want to take that thought experiment?
If I was writing in a different era?
Yeah.
Yes, of course it would be different. And I mean, just like the 20 odd years that I've been writing, because things have changed. Now you are writing about the internet. You think, it's like the world being totally connected is a new world. It's essentially being abroad is a very different thing, because it's like first when I went abroad, you were totally isolated from Iceland. It's a totally different experience. While now you're constantly connected in some way. Even when you try not to, you just like accidentally go on Facebook and you fall into the hole of like what's happening back home. So, for example, I think just the traditional travel writing becomes so much harder, because it's so much harder to lose yourself in a foreign city when your local city, your local country, your local town, it's on your phone. So it's it's more schizophrenic in a way. It's like I guess the problem is really for our times. Like the problem with being constantly connected is that we don't get bored enough. It's like you're sitting on the tram or the metro, and back in the day you would get bored. You would be watching. Everybody would be watching people or sort of staring into the abyss or whatever. Now you're just like, oh, I have nothing to do. Okay, there's something like here in my phone that I can do, for those 20 minutes. And then you don't really get to write anymore if you do that.
Yeah, it would be a worse world if we didn't have open mics where we actually assembled. That said, I really appreciated the videos you posted, and I got to know John's videos, and so I think you have some questions for John. So
yeah, but before I do that, I really liked what you said about expressing yourself in one language, no matter what language that is. So I definitely agree with that. And I actually wanted to ask John. John, you said you're also a polyglot. What are the languages that you speak?
I speak English, and I babble a little bit in maybe German, and I babble less in Spanish, and I babble the least in Danish.
Have you ever felt the need to write in another language?
Then Icelandic and English?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Not really. Not really. No, but my sister, who has lived in Germany for many years, and my brother also, and she has told me. Well, we had a conversation not so long ago where she was telling me about how much has been thought in German, and how much has been written in German, all the philosophy and all the poetry, and that made me kind of think about at least. So German is a language that I would most want to study outside of Icelandic or English, and just the way that she put it, like how much has been thought in that language. I was like, yes, of course, that makes sense. And I think, yeah. So I would like to learn German, and I would like to then write in German. I would do that, absolutely, because it's a different, like all languages, they are always an expression of thought and environment, and how you say something in Iceland, you can directly translate it, or you can translate it properly, or rightly, so the exact wording is not the same when you if you directly translate it, into German, they would always just say it in a different way, and or with different sayings, or with different connotations. So yeah, I would do that if I knew any other languages.
For sure. But then, of course, the entire performance and the entire attitude changes. It's not the same one. And speaking about German and Germany, my main question to you is that you are an author and a poetry slam winner in Iceland, and you experienced as well Berlin. Can you tell us the differences that you felt between the two artistic communities, and how much Hermetism or openness you can find in these? And is the Icelandic culture a platform for pleasure, a playground for tourists, or are there deeper understandings about it that we're missing and we should know about it?
So the differences are, yeah, there's a huge difference, or there are huge differences. It's like, it's even though, of course, everybody here is not the same. People are more cut from the same cloth, so to speak. In Berlin, my experience of it was that it's much more, it's a more diverse crowd, both the poets themselves and the audiences. And so, but I mean, talking about the slam scene here in Iceland, we don't really have one, not really, like I've talked about before, and I've done my best to try to build one. At the time, I tried my best to try to build one, but I'm not really much for organizing, and I'm more hungry just for the stage itself. So I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. And if I don't build a slam poetry scene here, then I can't perform. But if I build it, then I can't perform. So it's like but the difference is, like here, at least when I was having those nights, we lacked the social kind of understanding of it, and I'm not going to say responsibility of it, but the awareness of it. It was more just like for an entertainment value. People didn't really, they just hadn't experienced it like I have experienced it, like in different cultures and countries, and the way it can translate or transcend, different. It can transcend boundaries, and it can translate, what's going on both sides of those boundaries, so to say. So yeah, there's a vast difference. The poetry scene or the artistic scene here is with that being said, is very vibrant and thriving. It's just the land of the island of creativity, the land of fire and melting ice. as I've said, and yeah, it doesn't matter in which discipline you step into. You know, there's a whole lot going on, and of course a lot of it is for entertainment values. But like you said, you know, we are only about 300. Well, I actually think we have 360 or 365,000 actually today. The last time I counted individually, as I do, and did you have a last question there?
The other question was how much openness or hermetism is in your culture or in the expression of your art?
Me, personally?
No, collectively.
No.
You as well,
collectively.
rather collectively, I mean, on the...
No, I mean, I don't know if there's like a stereotype of, you know, of like of German people being more closed off or something, or Icelanders just being more closed off, but I don't find that translates to the poetry scene or to the, you know, we are very kind of vulnerable and open and you know, and exploring, and I wouldn't say that it's more or less closed off, but in my experience in what I experienced in Germany, like I say, it was just more like maybe just more diversity kind of in voices, you know. Of course everybody is unique in their way, but just coming from different kind of backgrounds and kind of, yeah, more distinct sometimes voices, I would say.
What do you think would be the cultural steps to take to make Iceland more appealing for us, for example? Because I know you've traveled, and I know I'm asking you all these questions because I know you can easily make the comparison between what's going on in your community out there and what's going on in the other communities that you have visited and explored.
How to sell ourselves better?
Yes.
I don't know. It's I think it's been done quite a lot. You know, Iceland is always, or it's not always, but it's very much perceived as it is actually in many ways. You know, as this unique island bursting or bubbling with creativity, and it is. But how to tell it better to a wider audience? I don't know. I think, like I said, I think it's just in the uniqueness itself, which has always been the selling point, and because it's true. There's something in the water here, and I don't know. Maybe both Harpa and Beatur could also answer this question.
I'm sorry?
Maybe Harpa and Beatur could also add to the answer of this question to help.
The other guests can jump in. The other guests can jump in if they have something to add to it, for sure.
I think I have a question for Beatur that would relate. So I agree, we can all jump in, but let's give Beatur the chance to also speak on creativity. And in your sense, Beatur, of especially you emphasize like the relationships between intense light through the summer months and intense darkness through the winter months. And I'm wondering how that impacts creativity for you or anybody else who's practicing on the island.
I don't know, because as an Icelander, I hear a lot that we are so creative and so wonderful and so this and that and so special, and oh, Iceland must be so magical and wonderful and blah 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 blah. And so I begin to believe that. And I think a lot of Icelandic people are brainwashed that they are so wonderful and we are so strong and beautiful.
It's interesting, you're talking about the power of suggestion, how people may feel, yes, we're here in Iceland and we have our conditions, light and darkness, but if we just kind of put our mind to it, we will be creative and, power through this. It's an interesting perspective. Yeah, and you also wanted to talk about this law of Jante, this term coined by the Danish-Norwegian author Asgeir in 1933. And I'd only remotely heard about it. So I was really excited that you wanted to bring that to our attention. How is his concern about individuality, how has that fared some 90 years later, especially in Iceland, this law of Jante, if you want to give us some ideas about that?
Yeah, Beatur, what does Jante mean?
Yeah, what a Jante, man.
What is Jante?
yeah, that's this Danish guy. He wrote this book called Law of Jante, where he describes this you shouldn't be better than anybody else kind of idea, which exists in kind of the underbelly of your being in all the other Scandinavian countries I've been to. And it's this: if you're really good at playing piano, don't play any for anybody, which is like, to me, just ridiculous. And you have this in Norway, and I moved to Norway 11 years ago, and presented myself as Beatur the Awesome, and it was like, oh, what did he say? Is that allowed? And I got positive response, because nobody does that. Nobody says, hi, blah, 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 and I'm amazing at what I do, because they just don't. It's not allowed. And that's this law of Jante stuff. But they have a similar stuff in Australia, and that is called the tall poppy syndrome, and the tallest poppy seed gets killed by the other flowers around. So all the sun gets equally distributed. And yeah, it came to my attention, and it was like on my mind. And then I had a taxi ride at a theater festival with an American slam poet and a Norwegian slam dude, and we were talking about this and the difference between Iceland and Norway and America. And in America, it's like, everybody's awesome. You're just, oh, it's an amazing drawing. Everybody gets a prize. You get a TV. You get a TV. No, disregarding the TV, but like, everybody gets a prize for participating, kind of mentality. Said Mums, this slam poet. And in Norway, it's the opposite. You can't, like I just described. And in Iceland, it's more related to what I was talking about earlier, about we're all strong and beautiful. Like, yeah, of course we can. Of course we're strong. What do you mean? It's just in us, I think. And yeah, we went on and made a show, made like a theater piece in New York, and it went on to be like back and forth, 2 years in New York, Norway, playing this show about law of Jante, and pointing out how ridiculous it is, and like, because it's so sad that these Scandinavian nations, that it's like in there. But then again, I also saw a Swedish show recently. I'll take all the last 30 minutes of this podcast just about this. I'm going to wrap it up with this. And then I saw a show in Sweden. They have the same law of Jante, and you're just really humble, and you don't really, even you're amazing. And like, it was a show about the Swedish guys who made all the hits for Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears and all these amazing people from Hollywood. They just sent like their artists to Stockholm, to one studio where they just made super mega hits, and it's still going on. And there, that guy was talking about law of Jante and how it makes them stronger somehow, that they don't. And even in that interview, he couldn't really say the names of all the cool people he had, won Grammys with, even though they were asking him like, so you won Grammys with who again? It's like, yeah, well, like, and it's so strong in him. I didn't really have a point with the last Swedish one, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I even answered your question, but it was delightful to listen to myself talk to you.
Please, if anyone wants to add something to it, I think it's a very interesting topic that we can a little bit enlarge further if you want.
I mean, if you're good at something in Iceland, like something unusual, you can be the best of it in Iceland, and it's still not going to be a job. While you can be one of the 100 best in Germany and something, and you'll have a job, full-time job doing that. And so it's like this. It also means like, hey, you can have somebody who is visible in the media, an artist. That doesn't mean that that artist is a full-time artist. It just means that he's like, yes, he's in the top 100, or well, he's maybe in the top 100 in his field, or top 10 or top 50, even in the top 5. But maybe that's not enough to have a job as an artist in Iceland.
I'm gonna disagree. I'm gonna say that the island has tremendous volcanic power, and it's in the water and it's in the air, and you can feel the ground shaking beneath you, and it gives you some kind of energy. That's just a theory, but I think it's true.
No, total bullshit. Sorry. I mean, any country has energy, different energy. I've traveled a lot, and like every country has the specific energy. It doesn't make, then it's just about what you make with it. So it's like, yes, you have, your mental landscape based on some volcanic energy. I mean, I've been next to a volcano. Most of us, until maybe last year, most of us have never actually seen a volcano erupt. So it's like, it's there, but it's not where we live. We live in the cities, we live in the towns.
Yeah, I want to disagree. No, but I wanted to not disagree, but add to Beatur's theory, because yes, it's dark all year round, but that's why we have the sagas. That's why we have all the old manuscript, because once upon a time, I wasn't the only farmer in Iceland. We were all farmers. And it was dark all day, and people lived in turf houses, and they could maybe go out once a day, and sometimes they couldn't even go out. And the animals were you could enter underground to feed the animals. And that's how we spent our times, telling stories, writing stories. And that's why we have the sagas, which is maybe what we are most famous for culturally in the big picture. And I also think I should go really banal on that, because I'm the only Icelandic girl here. We don't get this whole patted on the shoulder, everybody telling us we're strong and wonderful. I've even talked about, because I've talked about this with many female writers. You publish a book, and like my first poetry book got a prize, and I could have gone around saying, so this poetry book got the prize, it must be the best in Iceland this year. I never did. And people came to me and said, oh, it's a wonderful book, it's so good, it's so beautiful. And it's just something I wrote, so I think at least I do, and many girls I know, we back out from compliments, and we even have this really big group of Icelandic writers, female writers, who are call themselves imposter poets, because of the imposter syndrome we always feel. That we're trying to write and trying to publish, but we don't really belong there. We're always just waiting for the moment where somebody pats your shoulder and tells you to go home and take care of the kids. So, and I've also, discussed this with people, because it also has to do with our upbringing. When we were growing up, our parents weren't going around, telling us they loved us. There was no, my parents never told me they loved me, but they did, and this whole, because I am now raising a kid, and how kids are being raised today, just 20 years back, it was way different. All the prize that they're giving, and you're never supposed to tell them off. You're just supposed to hug them, really, or that's what I read in the books, at least. But I think most of us and the people who are creating art today, they didn't grow up with all this, stimuli, and they grew up just like us. Yeah, that was the point. Thank you. Or should I talk about the volcano too? Should I do that?
and how to sell ourselves better.
Yeah, just tell people that you live under a volcano and you're not scared. That's what they like.
It is amazing how with each podcast we never know where the podcast takes us, Daniel, right? Every time we arrive to different conversation, and it's just very interesting to explore all of that. So what I'm understanding from the Icelandic mentality is that you have a powerful energy expressing your nature. How about the energy of the people, like people to people? How does that work? Do you feel energized, and do you feel incentivized by people? Do you feel encouraged by people, or you are more everybody's shy and hermetic in their place, and they're having difficulties in expressing. How does that work?
So I think we should start this with saying that we do not have a word for please, and we don't say thank you. I think, people are always shocked by that. We never say please, and they say, how do you say please in Icelandic? Like, please, can you hand me the stuff? We don't have a word for that. We just say, hand this to me, thank you. Even maybe not thank you. So, but I think it's changing a little bit. We used to be pretty hermetical, and a lot of Icelanders are really closed off. For me, at least, that changed a bit when I entered the artistic community more. But because artists are different, they're more giving. But I think it's a little bit because of the smallness, because you're always you're supposed to know people and think, maybe he knows something about me, he knows somebody that I know, because most definitely we all know somebody that knows, and we say it takes 5 minutes when you meet a new person to find the mutual person that you know. I think 8 minutes tops. So I think that's how we always enter, a little suspiciously. Do you agree? Maybe.
Yeah, I agree, and yeah, kind of. In my experience, we can be closed off. I put a very strong emphasis on being courteous. What's the English word?
Polite.
Polite, yeah, thank you. Yeah, on being polite. But like if you're always talking to the same people, and if you kind of know all the same people, then saying please and all that, which is kind of like often like a social lubricant kind of, in communication, and and keeping everything smooth. It's like an oil that runs the gears kind of, but when you're always talking to the same people, you don't really always have to be, please and thank you and could you and if and maybe, and if it's not a bother, and so it speeds things along to be kind of more direct. With that being said, I don't know, in my near environment, near environment, it's always been, yeah, I mean, I say the same as Harpa, I didn't hear a lot of, love yous and stuff like that, which is kind of, my mother calls that sentimental porn. And and she never ever says, I love you or something like that, she just rolls her eyes and like, oh my God. And but then, she's getting a bit on in years. And so now she has actually started like in emails, to us kids or something, my dearest ones or something like that, so she's getting a bit softer in her older years. And
this is turning into us talking about our mothers. It's
yeah. I don't know. There's an openness, and it's sometimes I feel like it's a little bit of the feeling that we are all in the same boat, kind of. When you meet Icelanders abroad, I still feel there's always a little bit, or if you hear Icelandic somewhere, out in the wide world, and you hear it, and then you feel kind of special, or you feel it being kind of special, or something, it's a little bit, and it drags you in, and if you meet some Icelanders, and you absolutely want to ask them what they're doing there, or how they ended up there, or and so there's always this kind of bond. It's like, yeah, like I say, it's like we're in the same kind of boat, and most people, I think, that move abroad, it's a little bit in how we talk about it. It's always a little bit like, so I'm moving abroad, but you never really say it permanently, and then people are like, okay, when are you coming back? Oh, it's going to be in a few years, and then people talk about moving back home, and I mean, I guess everybody does that, but it's like it's often a bigger decision to move back to an island in the North Atlantic, yeah. Maybe we just have to build a bridge. Maybe that's the best way to sell us better.
No, I just want to add to that, because it's the same with moving to Reykjavik. It was the same. Yeah, I'm probably coming back.
Yeah. City of fear.
It is also a way, though. I've really appreciated how the thought of a domestic situation, how our parents say I love you, or they don't, or whatever, but the idea of how that ripples to not only communities, but events. And it would be really interesting for us to hear how you have made events happen in Iceland, whether in Reykjavik or outside of Reykjavik. How do those events happen? Do you have to say, please come to my event if you don't have a word for please, or how does that happen?
Actually, that would have been the next topic we wanted to ask a little bit everybody about what are the coolest things that we would like to see when we come to Reykjavik. The interesting events or the interesting places to go to when we go there.
I would always say so. Maybe to start with Daniel's kind of thinking about how these events happen, or and how we make them happen. Of course, it varies very much, and depends on if you're doing completely independently, or if you have some organization or some money coming in from somewhere else or whatever. It's mostly social media, I guess. Like everything is today, and sometimes social media here is a little bit more concentrated, because or in a more negative term, more like an echo chamber kind of thing. You invite like-minded people who you know are like-minded, and it's funny. Like if you would, because the art scene is of course different. There's a lot of different disciplines and a lot of different ways to express yourself. But at the same time, everybody kind of knows of each other. Maybe not everybody of every single one, but everybody kind of has heard, is this name a little bit, or and can associate it with. So we're kind of aware of each other, And so, if you would only critique or examine or observe more art through social media or the art scene, you would think that everybody is absolutely brilliant all the time, every day, because everybody is such a, like I say, it's a more negative connotation, like say it's something that is an echo chamber, but it's like a like a bird,
Yeah, and maybe add to that, because you were talking about social media. You can create an event, you're doing a poetry reading or slam evening or whatever. You create the event and you invite 100 people, say, and they all do interested, and everybody, then 1,000 people see that the event's happening, and you meet somebody and they say, you're going to do this event, it's going to be fabulous. But at the event, you only see the same 10 people that you would have seen anyway, So you can create an event, you can make it look really good, but maybe not a lot of people will attend anyway. And it's always the same people, I think.
Do you have competition? Do you have competitive events happening? Like here in Berlin, we have every single day, at least, 500 events per day. And there's a huge competition, and especially the comedy. I don't know if you have stand-up comedies out there, but Europe is just overflowed with stand-up comedy events. Every single day we have stand-up comedy events. It's nice. It's just a new trend. I'm not sure if you guys have the same thing out there.
We used to have a very thriving comedy scene here, actually. So I was part of a group that we called ourselves Golden Gang Comedy, and we started these open mic nights at Beatur, which is like a tried and tested establishment downtown Reykjavik, where I'm from. Actually, I'm from central downtown Reykjavik, and it went on for like 3 years, and we did hundreds of shows every Monday in English, and it was mostly foreigners and tourists, and and it was a huge hit at the time, and it's like maybe now 2 years since 2-3 years since that establishment stopped, or kind of just like a little bit before COVID, we moved to another place, a smaller place, which was better managed actually than the other one, and so it was very thriving. We have a few stand-up groups, kind of, which is more fun, and it's kind of like they did so well. One of them, they had a few shows, and like an improv kind of thing, Icelandic improv group, which is huge in Iceland, Icelandic improv, and they are now on television on the state-run television channel with their own show. So that's great. And so we had but now today I dropped kind of out of it, at least in managing it and all that, which I was doing for a long time there with my friend, the open mic nights. And we had a lot of comics, and a lot of comics who are now kind of doing their own thing, doing their own shows. They started out there with us, and we had the biggest comics in Iceland also coming and testing out their material in Iceland, in English, I mean, before they went on to bigger and better things. And we have one who's called Ari Eldjárn, who's kind of like the mega stand-up comic kind of Iceland. So it's I would say the comedy scene here it's kind of big, but it could be, we kind of need again to have like an open mic kind of, not just an open mic just like any other local kind of small open mic, but more like a testing ground for everybody to come and test their material, or everybody needs this, because stand-up comedy is so difficult. I once met a comic who's like a professional comic. He said, or stand-up comedian, I mean, and he was like, you have to perform at least 100 times before you get even close to finding your own voice or being good or whatever, and it's maybe not the same as with slam poetry, but it's definitely, you have to do it a few times before you kind of find your footing on stage there, and in your performance. So yeah, I would say it's alive here and kicking, the comedy scene, but it could use a bit more grassroots kind of again thing happening. So yeah.
Well, we're here to hear any other events. So I wondered if Asgeir or Beatur had any events that you wanted to promote for us, whether it's the genre of an event or a specific venue that you wanted to tell the world about.
Well, I have a solo show called Master of the Universe, where I take my story growing up in alcoholism and realizing that I might myself be afflicted by the disease, and how, those struggles made me into the human I am. And it's a pretty cool show with comedy, music, the whole emotional roller coaster. And I don't have for this podcast specific time or place, but if you remember, Beatur, Master of the Universe, I've heard that before, then go, okay, thanks.
So it's like an anti-Jante.
I mean, my focus right now is, mainly on writing. There's I do perform regularly in Prague. There's nothing like right now coming up that I remember, in terms of dates. But in Prague, there's a few open mic sessions that I go to, but then there's also, I work with Urban Space Epics, which is sort of an artist collective in the Meat Factory, and I'm sort of the token poet. So it's the main thing there is that there's a video DJ, VJ. So he's projecting his images while we are doing music or doing poetry or doing art, doing dancing, and that's every other month or so, sort of at an open studio. But yeah, basically my regular days will be either working as a journalist, covering films mostly, sometimes literature, or writing my own stuff, my own poetry, my fiction, stuff like that. So there is a new book almost ready, but when it comes out, hopefully this year, let's see.
Harpa.
Yes, I have a new book probably coming out this year, yes, but it's going to be in Icelandic, so I can't really recommend that for you. The idea, maybe something you would be interested in, is that I am the head of a group called the Book Lovers of Iceland, because I'm just going to be talking about books because that's where I come from. The book towns have been holding like this multilingual poetry nights for a couple of years now. And during COVID, we moved it online so people can find it. And we have people who live here but speak another language, preferably because they do come from another country. So we want people to be performing on their mother tongue, and then we translate poetry to Icelandic. So we've been doing that for quite a few years, and it's really, for us, it's kind of made a closer group of the people who have immigrated here. Like, for example, for the first time, we did this. We connected the Red Cross and the town that we held it in, Reykjavik, which is close to Reykjavik. We just had a group of refugees from Syria, and we just connected the Red Cross, saying, do you have any people, do you know any people in the area who would like to participate? And we got this group from Syria, 2 families who'd moved there a couple of weeks before. And they didn't really know anybody, and they came there and they performed their poetry. And then we had, because it was such a short time, and we just had them, they translated over to English. And we just had the mother and then her son translated. And it was an amazing experience hearing this new language. And the people who had just come here from such a terrible situation. And ever since, they always come and they always perform, and it's really amazing. And just for us to, like in a small community like that, to get to know somebody this quickly, because it can take time when you don't speak the language, and you have to like find your place in the community, get a job, meet people. And also we've had connections to a residency called Witty. They normally send us a few poets from just wherever who's staying there at the moment. So this builds bridges. And
We spent some time there.
We spent some time there, yes.
Yeah.
You weren't sent anywhere though.
No.
But you also came to one of these nights once, because that's what I've been, because making events like that, not in Reykjavik, I'm always trying to drag, some people from Reykjavik, and you're almost there just to introduce slam to the people there. And I'm most positive not everybody in the community even knew what slam was about. So being able to get him to come there, and then the year we once had, because then this event had become so much, we had so many immigrants and foreign people, and then I had a guy to tell us about Rímur, the old Icelandic, the first Icelandic slam, really. It was a kind of poetry performance. And I went, also for the people to know our culture. So I'm hoping we're doing a live event this year. It hasn't been planned, but then it would be a stream, so people could maybe check that out.
Actually, just yesterday I was doing a slam in one of my attempts to sell slam to the nation of Iceland. I was at the university doing like a lecture and the showcase of slam poetry, and I was invited now for the 3rd time in a row to that university. And I was just thinking, because I'm sort of building master, I was going to refer to Beatur now as master of the universe. It just came to me automatically, so I think that's something that works for him. I'm going to do a slam show, but it's not going to be, I'm actually finishing my MA in creative writing, and my head is just really bogged down in that right now. So I've actually just I've kind of co-floated, I've cut out of kind of event holding right now, and because I need my head all together now, and for this last run, I'm just finishing it now in these months. So that's where I'm at right now. But I would tell everybody to go and read our translation of Romeo and Juliet, which me and Harpa just did for the National Theatre of Iceland. We have to work better on that, Harpa, to get him to publish it in a book.
All right. Thank you so much to everyone. Daniel, if you can think of the last question. My last question to all of you would be just a practical question. If you guys have a place or a space where you can all meet, for example, if we come as artists to Reykjavik, where would we go? Where would we connect with artists and mind-like people? Do you have a space like that?
Yeah, I mean, coffee houses here. So it's like maybe downtown. I could say what Rentalshús maybe, which is like a kind of a gathering that we have a lot of poetry readings there and stuff like that.
Also the Nordic house, I'd like to say.
Yeah, the Nordic house. I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, but I think maybe it would have to be, what are you interested in? Like, do you want to meet, stand-up comedy? Is it poetry? Is it film? Like, be a part of this? If it's film.
Yeah.
And then you would just kind of have to look for what you're looking for. Is what I'm gonna say. But yeah, but we do that. We drop in places. That's where we meet new artists, I think.
So they are accessible. You don't have to stress too much in finding these places. That was my question.
It's mostly all downtown, and so where mostly everything happens kind of in Reykjavik, or a lot of it. We have there are studios and where artists kind of converge. I'm trying to think of what the name of it is. It's up in Krookhouse. It's I don't remember the exact name of it, but maybe it's more like a art collective studio kind of thing where, you could go there and maybe meet some artists, but I don't know if they're all, I don't know how exactly it works for them. But we, or artists, and I think, very much just meet here, very much downtown in coffee shops and bars, and, it's kind of like a thriving, you can sort of walk through an Icelandic crowd and pick somebody on the shoulder, and there's a 90% chance he's an artist, So you will not be alone if you just come here and then just tap people on the shoulder and ask them what they're doing.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe I can add to that. There's like a magazine or like a newspaper called Grapevine.
Grapevine.
And in that, grapevine, like through the grapevine. In that magazine or newspaper, there's a plethora of information about all the art events, where they are happening, all the venues, everything, so you would definitely want to pick up a copy of that. They're free, and they are lying around in puffin shops and coffee shops and bars and all around the Reykjavik metropolitan area, mostly downtown though, I guess.
Great.
Awesome.
And they have a website and everything, so and then we also have sort of like what to do in Iceland, what to do in Reykjavik. I think it's just on Facebook as a site, Like I say, we are a lot of, we are well connected to the internet. A lot of happenings there, of course, as everywhere else. So maybe that's a starting point. But then, like Harpa said, it depends on what you want. The Nordic house is more like a classic, like art kind of thing, but all the venues are, just check those out. I think Grapevine,
Yeah, it's good to have hands-on stuff like that, and the internet's always with us, but having things face-to-face, things in your hands, a destination to go to. Just as a way of closing from my point of view, Iceland is often this flyover state where people look and know it's beautiful down there, but it's pretty deliberate to get there. So I appreciate that you have represented that. And I think a big takeaway for me is that, there is a robust aspect, maybe a bit thrust on the people of Iceland because of the difficult conditions, light and darkness and everything that we've talked about. But it seems like this is a culture not afraid to be small and to, challenge assumptions about that sense of how collective do we need to be, how individual can we be, and not necessarily prescribing those. So I really appreciate everything that you've added to this podcast.
Thank you guys as well. Yes, John.
No, I was just going to say I appreciate it also very much. Thank you for having me.
So thank you guys for all the inputs that you gave us. I'm taking away this very interesting aspect, this very interesting linguistic aspect that you said, that you don't have the words please and thank you. That says a lot about your culture. I feel there's a lot of pride in your culture, and there's a lot of individuality, and it's something that's to be respected and appreciated. And
I really have to add that we have those words, but what I was saying is that it's not normal for us to say please, like this, please hand me this. You just say hand me this, and like especially when you meet Americans, they say please all the time.
Yes,
and they find it weird.
Yes.
Also, when you're moving in a crowd, I've noticed this. You don't say, could you please move aside so I can get there? You're just gonna, use your shoulder to get through.
I was myself shocked when I went to the US. Every time I used to buy something, even you buy anything small, and every person would ask you, how are you doing today? And I found that very strange, because it's such a personal question to be asked by any store that I would go and I would buy anything. So it's just it's an extreme form of politeness to me.
Yeah, because they don't expect an answer.
Yes.
You can't say, I'm really not feeling that well.
Yes, and that's
nobody else expects that.
That makes it worse for me, because I come from a culture where we are pretty direct and we do express our feelings. And for me, it was a bit of a shock going to places where people just are polite, but they don't really mean their words. And also, just a little bit to recap from what we talked about, the differences, the societal differences, expressing emotions. There is of course, the generations have changed, and we come from different. When I was a child, our parents used to be different. Now we're different with our own children. There is a society change, all in all, everywhere. But I think from my point of view, it's always incredible, useful to express what you believe, your emotion, and what you think of and to say also that you're awesome. I never said that. I'm a host. I'm a moderator to many events, and I'm not allowed to say any such words on stage. But I'm hoping every artist will do that, and when talk about themselves and present themselves. I think it's just amazing.
You should try it.
I think it's just amazing. If everyone would come up on stage, so we have every time like 13, 14 artists from different cultures, from different countries. That's the beauty of Berlin. It's very diverse, and it would be just amazing everyone to just say, "Hey, I'm great. I'm amazing. I'm good at what I do." So yeah, I think that's a very, very cool and positive point that I'm taking with me today. And I want to thank you all for being with us today. I know it was difficult to arrange. You have different time zones, so we are really appreciative of your time and of your inputs. And please. Yes.
Yes, I was just going to say, like, in trying to pimp some events that I'm actually doing. I'm actually coming to Czech in the summer to do like to the literary festival. It's like a month-long festival.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your presence and for everything that you shared with us today. Like I said, the podcast will be on YouTube and available starting from the 1st of March. And we're looking forward to have you back in Europe, and we hope somehow to come out there to see you, and let's continue this multicultural exchange going, and let's do things together. Let's do projects together. It's just beautiful to grow together that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Enjoy
You should
your day.
try it.
Bye.
Bye, awesome person.